A warm virtual greeting to everyone with us today, and welcome to the tribute to Kidlat Tahimik, Lolo of Filipino Indie Cinema Talkback session. Presented to us by the Department of Foreign Affairs and the Film Development Council of the Philippines. To officially begin our event, we have a message from the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Chidoro Locsin Jr.
Today we commemorate the 158th birthday of Andres Bonifacio, father of the Philippine Revolution. Today we also pay tribute to the Lolo of Filipino indie films, national artist for film Eric de Guia, better known as Kidlat Tahimik. He has greatly contributed to the development of Philippine cinema. Before Kidlat, there was a Jose Nepomuceno, the first Filipino film director whose silent motion picture, Dalagang Bukid, was a box office hit in 1919. Then and now, films are an unparalleled source of entertainment, extending the boundaries of our imagination without stepping out of everyday realities. These days, films provide an escape from the distress and isolation brought on by the pandemic. Like most creative industries, Philippine cinema has been significantly set back by the suspension of production operations and theater closures. However, the Film Development Council of the Philippines took the crisis as an opportunity to explore other ways to make and show Philippine films, thereby giving hope to an industry that continues to bring us international recognition. Kidlat Tahimik contributed immensely to a global film culture that carved the path for emerging Filipino directors to the most prestigious of film festivals abroad. With his alternative style of filmmaking that relies more on storytelling than cinematic effects, he made films depicting our history and culture in an unconventional, innovative way. He showed his winning formula right off the bat with his first film, Perfumed Nightmare. It won 3 awards at the Berlin Film Festival and was distributed by Francis Ford Coppola's company. Filipinos take pride in artists like Kidlat Tahimik, whose creations are on a par with international works, despite being made with less resources. We hope this Congress enacts into law the Creative Industry Bill that seeks to raise the local film industry to greater heights. My heartfelt thanks to the FDCP, led by its chair, Lisa Dino Segura, for its continued and vital partnership with the Department of Foreign Affairs in promoting Philippine cinema abroad. Through its Philippine Embassy Assistance Program, the FDCP has supported the cultural diplomacy initiatives of nearly 30 Philippine Foreign Service posts, including the conduct of Filipino film festivals in countries like Italy, Singapore, and Portugal. Kidlat Tahimik was in fact the guest of honor in the Philippine Cinema Retrospective held in Lisbon in 2019. I can only say thank you and mabuhay to Kidlat Tahimik, whose outstanding talent and generosity of spirit have propelled Philippine cinema and Filipino culture to the world stage. The DFA is proud to showcase his works to global audiences for the first time via streaming on the sharing platform Vimeo. Finally, congratulations to the Office of Public and Cultural Diplomacy for organizing this Talkback event and finding even more creative ways to connect the Philippines to the rest of the world through culture and the arts. Thank you.
And now let's hear a message from the chairperson and CEO of the Film Development Council of the Philippines, Undersecretary Mary Liza Dino.
To our beloved National Artist for Film and Broadcast, Tatay Kidlat Tahimik, Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. of the Department of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Eduardo Meñez, Assistant Secretary, Office of Public and Cultural Diplomacy of the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Cultural Diplomacy Corps of DFA and its Foreign Service posts, Mr. Jag Garcia, Professor of Film and Media Studies at the De La Salle College of St. Benilde, Manila, our colleagues in the DFA, government partners, and friends of Philippine cinema. This is Undersecretary Liza Dino, the chairperson and CEO of the Film Development Council of the Philippines, welcoming you all to our Talkback with Kidlat Tahimik for the tribute to Kidlat Tahimik, Lolo of Filipino indie cinema. Tatay Kidlat was one of the people I thought about when we began conceptualizing the celebrations for the first Philippine Film Industry Month in September of this year. Our theme was Ngayon ang bagong sinimula, as we regarded this occasion as a sort of fresh start for our film industry heavily affected by the pandemic. It was also an opportunity to commemorate our heritage and the legacy of our forefathers in Philippine cinema, kind of looking at where we've been to see now where we are going as an industry, as a nation, and as one cinema. Tatay Kidlat is the father of Philippine independent cinema and a force of nature in our industry that I have had the pleasure of interacting with quite often. He was top of mind for this commemoration. His works in film are windows into our glorious past, often about the beauty of our indigenous culture and the inundations of foreign influences in our society. His films are films that make you think. They are showing rich visuals and locales and pose questions and ideas. Audiences from other countries who have had the privilege of watching Kidlat Tahimik's films are affected in the same way, evident in the acclaim he had received from various film festivals all over the world. Kidlat Tahimik has won accolades from both local and international award-giving bodies such as Cinemalaya, Gawad Urian, Prince Claus Fund, Amiens International Film Festival, and Berlin International Film Festival. And we are fortunate that the Department of Foreign Affairs and Public and Cultural Diplomacy Office took this initiative to bring some of these beautiful films to us through online screenings. And we are grateful to be tapped as a partner of this very admirable endeavor. 5 notable works from Kidlat Tahimik will be screened for free on the Vimeo channel. Perfumed Nightmare, a 1977 film. Sino ang lumikha ng Yoyo? Sino ang lumikha ng Moon Buggy, both from 1979. Turumba from 1981. Bakit Dilaw ang Gitna ng Bahaghari from 1994. And Balikbayan #1, Memories of Overdevelopment Redux, the third of 2015. Today, we also have the unique pleasure of listening to Tatay Kidlat himself for firsthand anecdotes and stories about his life and his work that are as colorful as the indigenous outfits of his region that he loves to wear. Our capable mentor from the Film Academy, Mr. Jag Garcia, is also here to help the flow of the lively discussion. It is always great to work with you, Jag, and to Tatay Kidlat. The screen is your canvas on which you paint the visions of what being a Filipino in this era is all about. We thank you for this gift of sight, critical thinking, and the deep appreciation of our sariling atin. You and your films radiate this love for our own culture, which we hope will reach more of our audiences and the future generation of audiences. So please, everyone, enjoy the Talkback. Watch these outstanding films and learn as much as you can from our national artist. Keep the love of our cinema at heart, and let us all support everyone's efforts to keep our culture and industry alive. Be safe, everyone, and good afternoon.
Our moderator for today's Talkback session has 30 years of experience in various fields of the media industry. He was the former vice head of the National Committee on Cinema of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. He has also been teaching with the De La Salle College of St. Benilde for 20 years, where he was, among other things, the founder and former chairperson of the Digital Filmmaking Program. Let us all welcome Mr. Jag Garcia.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Talkback with Kidlat Tahimik, part of our celebration of our national artist Kidlat Tahimik, the Lolo of Filipino independent cinema. So once again, good afternoon. My name is Jag Garcia, and I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone here and acknowledge the presence of some of our friends that are joining us this afternoon. Starting off with the Honorable Eduardo Martin Minez, the Assistant Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs, Office of Public and Cultural Diplomacy, Her Excellency Ms. Shobini Gunasekera, the Ambassador from the Embassy of Sri Lanka. Good afternoon, ma'am. The Honorable Francis Garganera, Secretary of Culture, Sports, and Education of the Embajada Argentina and Filipinas. And the Honorable Brenda Barton, the Representative and Country Director of the United Nations World Food Program. And last but not the least, joining us also this afternoon is Mr. Rosario Lemke, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Office of European Affairs of the Department of Foreign Affairs. Also joining us this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, are friends from the media. They're out there in this virtual world, but welcome, and in behalf of the FDCP and the Department of Foreign Affairs, we welcome all of you. Now, we're all here, ladies and gentlemen, to get to sit down. I get to sit down and talk to Kidlat Tahimik. And who is he? Well, he's been exploring his inner cultural contradictions by making films since 1975. And this has earned him the title of the father of Philippine independent cinema. And today we celebrate him as the Lolo, the grandfather of Philippine independent cinema. It was in 1977 at the Berlin International Film Festival where he won the International Critics Prize for his first film, Perfumed Nightmares or Mababangong Bangungot. And this made him a household name and international icon for what was called Third Cinema, a 1970s global film movement that resisted Hollywood and Hollywood's commercial films and Moscow's propaganda films. So, interesting. And in 2015, he was awarded the Caligari Prize for Balikbayan #1 at the Berlinale. And this was his lifetime film project where he played the role of Magellan's slave interpreter named Enrique, who was destined to be the first man to circle the planet, to circumnavigate the globe. And this central theme is what was present in his gigantic installation, Tres Guerras Culturales, that was mounted at the Museo Reina Sofia at the Palacio Cristal here in 2021, which he just returned from. And of course, there's this film is also still in production. He's still fine-tuning this film for the 2021 realities that we are facing and to also celebrate the quincentennial of Enrique's circumnavigation. Kidlat Tahimik, ladies and gentlemen, has won Lifetime Achievement Awards from the Prince Claus Awards in the Netherlands in 2017, the Fukuoka Prize from Japan in 2012, and here in 2018, awarded the National Artist for Cinema and Television. We're going to be opening this with a video. We're going to show you some short videos before we call Tatay Kidlat up on stage, after which we invite everyone. Punch your questions in. If you're on Facebook, put it in the comments. If you're watching us through Zoom, just put it in the chat or the question and answer box, and we will field it to Tatay Kid. So without further ado, let's see this video.
film on Ferdinand Marcos' slaves.
Gunshots. Somewhere down there.
Gunshot. You watch too much TV, Kidlat.
But I heard some. Talaga.
Ooh, can you find a stone that's that long?
We can find. Only it will take a long time to ship.
Bayani ng Balyan, ang una sa ating makararating sa Amerika, ang ating Balyan boy, Kidlat Tahimik.
I can only promise you, when I become rich in America, I will donate a traffic light for our bridge.
The person who invented yodeling must have been as genius as the one who invented the yo-yo. The yo-yo principle is like that of yodeling. You throw it away, and it comes back. Filipino inventors have many original ideas. Many years ago, I too created an original car.
Spanish ka pala, ay turumba na. Tinakalain makagawa tayo ng 250 taka. Oo. Kailangan pala paspasan. Magagawin na tayo.
Natuwa tayo't masaya.
So once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions to ask Tatay Kid, you may put them into the Q&A box here on Zoom, or you may also put them in the comments section, or if you're watching via Facebook Live, and our moderators will compile that and they will field them to us. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming the National Artist for Cinema and Television, Mr. Kidlat Tahimik.
Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. First of all, maligayang Andres Bonifacio Day. Today is also the start of my year-end celebrations. I'm not so much a Christmas man. So ang umpisa ng holidays ko is today, November 30. Sumusunod ng December 15th, Emilio Jacinto's birthday. December 30, Rizal Day, and believe it or not, January 6, hindi 3 Kings. Yun ang birthday ni Tandang Soro. So that's my season, beginning day. Maligayang season sa inyong lahat.
Okay, so that is that's a month and a half long celebration of Filipinos, of our heroes, revolutionaries.
Sariling bayani. Yes.
There we go. Our sariling bayanis are our own heroes. Okay, so let's kick this off. Tatay Kid, before everybody else's questions come in, I'm going to ask my questions. So now you're regarded as the father of Philippine independent cinema, but for many Filipinos, for many contemporary Filipino filmmakers, Philippine independent cinema, indie cinema, is not something that happened until the 2000s. Cinemalaya and thereabouts. No, what was independent cinema like when you started out? What was it at its infancy in the Philippines?
Alam nyo, actually, I happened to be coming out on stage during the era when independent cinema was at least becoming a recognized institution. Pero bago noon, there were many other independent attempts. So I would even say somebody like Manuel Conde had a very independent spirit. To be audacious enough to do a film about Genghis Khan, wow. And to shoot a Mongolian film in tropics, wow. And you can't do that kung taga-Hollywood ka. No? You would have all the constraints of the authenticity, and you don't have bamboos in Mongolia and all that kind of thing. But that independent spirit was already there. And there were other independents like the Cebu brothers. I forgot their name. It's Super 8 cameras. Shot their films and then blew them up to 35 millimeter. Since that formal title of independent films only came out probably in the late 80s or even 70s. But it was something that has already been a kind of a maybe response, some reaction laban sa Hollywood. Something to counteract the big commercial films that became a monopoly of big producers. And so it's like any big revolution. Before the big revolution, there are little pockets of resistance that have started. So I happen to be called Tatay or Lolo of independent film. I would say that I just happened to be born at the right time, but there are others who preceded me, and I pay tribute to their spirit.
And in your opinion, I mean, especially in the past, what's it now, 20 years, 15, 20 years now, how has independent cinema changed in the Philippines, or has it changed in the Philippines?
I think it's very thriving and kicking and alive alternative to what I call PSD films. Films. PSD, patok sa takilya. So the independent cinema has proven that there are so many authors, no? People who make their own film, conceptualization to final execution, because they believe kailangan marinig itong kwento ko. The world has to hear my story, and I will do it whether or not I have a big institutional backing or I have my own resources. So this indie spirit has, thanks to Cinemalaya and to other platforms that have come since, at least during my time, wala pang panon, walang YouTube, walang Cinemalaya, walang all these little festivals that are allow a filmmaker to share the story. We're all storytellers, let's face that, and we happen to choose the medium of, well, in my time it was celluloid. Ewan ko kung alam pa ng mga kabataan. I don't know if many of our audience know even what film is, no? This little strip. We used to call it spaghetti, the filmmakers. Kasi pagka unravel, the films unravel, they become a whole spaghetti pile. And we used to call Kodak was Rochester spaghetti, and Agfa was Munich spaghetti, and Fuji was Tokyo spaghetti. But during those times, we wanted to tell a story from our point of view or from our culture's point of view, and not from the framings that come from commercial successes. No? Very often, a nice story can get mangled and twisted out of shape because the money considerations that it must make a 505% profit on the first day. All these things change the parameters of your story. So independence is to be independent of that requirement. Basta may kwento ko lang, may share ko lang sa aking kababayan. I can share it with my community, I can share it with my university or with my friends. This is the main goal of the independent artist. We're happy if we can make a little profit, we're happy we make a big profit, but it's not the central goal. And I think all these last 20 years, I feel so, hindi na ako nag-iisa in that field. It's gone a long way with a lot of also female directors, with indigenous directors, with gay directors, they're everywhere.
Well, on that note, you mentioned you mentioned female directors, indigenous directors, especially indigenous directors. Stories from the regions, stories from the fringes. Now, has has the Filipino story become global, or has the global story also become the Filipino story? How do you see that?
Okay, that word global, it's a double-bladed word, no? Because yeah, it can be when we're colonized by Hollywood, we are being globalized to tell the story that will make the global profits. On the other hand, can Filipinos globalize? Can our stories be global? I think it depends on what is the meaning of global in terms of the trust of the word. Sa akin, kung may universal values ang pelikula mo, if there are things in that appeal beyond the borders of this country or this region, and it can appeal to people in America or in Europe or in Mars. This kind of globalization is really saying, hey, marami tayong in common internally, even if we look different, even if we behave differently, even if we use different technologies. Our inner human story can be resonated with by other people. And this is, I think, where if you about can Filipino stories be globalized? I think yes. It just has to be an awareness now. We don't have to copy that formula that has been, I would say, imposed. But let's say it has attracted us. The commercial formula that kailang ang resulta, kailang ang takbo ng takilya, the ringing of the cash register has to be fitting commercial trust. And because of that, we don't tell our own stories are put aside. A few years ago, Ricky Lee, my friend Ricky Lee, he was having a film workshop in Baguio. We had a beer together and asked, kamusta? Your best scripts, have you been able to present them to Mother Lily and to the other people in producers? And he said, alam mo, Kidlat, ang best written scripts ko ay nasa ilalim ng baul of my chest. He probably didn't even dare show them, knowing that there's a quiet censorship. In other words, if it doesn't look like it will make that big profit, why even present it at all? So we have to know that this globalization is really there. I think there are audiences who want to hear these kinds of stories. They may not be as big as the super audiences today created by Hollywood. We have to find other criteria that they can be shown for those who are hungry for those Filipino stories that are global in nature, because they have a local spirit that is connected with the rest of the world.
Okay, so so we're gathering some questions now. They're just coming in, but I'm going to add to this one as well. No, you were saying that storytelling is being hindered, or the potentials for storytelling are being hindered by the need for financial returns. No, and your films, you did not create your films for commercial. Well, not commercially. They were not produced with the taquilla or the box office in mind. How was that like? I mean, is it frightening? Is it as a filmmaker, because we have a lot of young filmmakers watching us today, and they feel that that if nothing comes back, their film is a failure. How was it creating those films, knowing that you were not going for box office success?
Well, not going for office box success doesn't mean that I want to have, I'm so centric, I don't care if nobody watches my film. No, talagang, I would like people to listen to my story. But I'm not letting the money factor become the primary reason for making the film. For example, itong pelikulang ginagawa ko ng 40 years, no? The secretary mentioned this film, Balikbayan #1, my film about the voyage of Magellan in 1521. You know that song, no? It was in 1521. That was when 500 years ago. And now we are celebrating the quincentennial. But he started that film. And somehow I kept going and going and going. And I knew maybe it might take a lifetime, maybe next lifetime ko naman premiere yung film. But this year, I got the impetus to finally finish it, or try to finish it this year, on the 500th anniversary of Voyage. But because my focus was not on Magellan, but my focus was on the slave of Magellan, Enrique, he came, who I think is the first person to circumnavigate the globe. And I said, okay, that's that engine that yun ang nagpapasigla sa akin. Doon lumalabas yung aking lakas pag ituloy at ituloy hanggang matapos, hanggang makaabot sa finish line. I think with that kind of a motivation, there's nothing heroic about it. It's a personal desire to finish your story and share it. No? I think it's the same with somebody like Andres Bonifacio today, who started the revolution and wanted to see it finished. It's an inner fire that brings your efforts, and because of this, you don't care about profits. You don't care whether profits come or not. I always wanted, Lino Broca was my colleague. We were friends. We were together in UP. Pareho kaming graduate in 1963. Kami ni Ben Cervantes. We were all speech and drama majors. And whenever I saw Lino Broca's films it had a big audience. Wow, I said, I would like to have those audiences. But if my storytelling or my style of filming is not yet palatable, I'll wait for the time when my message will reach those people. Or at least if my films can reach the next generation of filmmakers, so that they will be the ones who will pick up that independent road and make films that are free of the commercial constraints. So it's been a long road, but I know that I have no regrets. I'm happy that after 40 years, I'm still able to tell that story of the slave Magellan being the first person. In other words, one of us, one of our country has been the first circumnavigate the globe, not the conquistadors.
So find your engine. Find that engine that will keep you going.
I think that's the spirit of independence. No? For example, I've been asked what makes an independent film. One of the biggest independent films that I think, and I would call it an indie film, in spite of the fact that it was a Hollywood production, was yung film ni Kevin Costner, Dances with Wolves. I think, first of all, he was giving a voice to the indigenous Native Americans. Secondly, I think one important thing there was that he allowed a large portion of the film to be in the native language which is a no-no in Hollywood. No? And it's no-no in Hollywood because they're afraid to lose a few customers who are too lazy to read subtitles. Maybe you can have 30 seconds of foreign language and subtitles, but when the story has about 30 minutes of dialogues in the Navajo language, that was taking a independent thrust against the rules of Hollywood. So the story did pick up the original flavor that I think, Kevin Costner as an indie was able to express it. And so I'm trying to break this thing that indie should be like Tahimik, zero budget, 40 years in the making, and starring Kidlat Tahimik because I'm the cheapest actor available. This kind of. It's not that. I'm just one extreme. I wanted to show there are other indie films. It's the spirit of the filmmaker and defying and audacious enough not to obey those rules that are always tied to that super profit. If the story is so dear to our heart, and I felt that was something I could see in that film, Dance with Wolves, I could relate to it. And I'm glad that there are more and more now dito sa Pilipinas who are really taking that step and saying, okay, I want to tell my story. I'm not going to wait for the big bucks from the big producers.
Okay. So we have some questions here from the audience. Now, the first one is from Mical de Dios, and he's asking, are there any current themes and issues that are motivating you to keep telling stories today?
Again, will you repeat that?
Are there any current themes and issues that motivate you to keep telling stories?
Yeah, I think one of the strongest issues that keep pushing me is that our 400 years of colonization has made us almost shy to stories. Remember, it was Chitang Nakpil, the mother of Gemma Araneta, who she wrote, "We Filipinos have lived 300 years in the convent and 50 years in Hollywood."
Mm-hmm.
And because a lot of us are reluctant to create our own style, to even bring up the stories that may have come from yung mga pinakatulok, pinakabaryo, all the corners of our islands. And because of that, many stories, like Ricky Lee said, nakaupo lang sa ilalim ng baul. Maybe we fear that we have to do that formula. To be a good filmmaker, you have to follow the dictates that kailangan 500% profit, etc., which are dictated by the producers. But I think now that we have democratized filmmaking, because, with the new technologies, you don't need the big bucks of the big producers in Hollywood or even here in the Philippines. More stories are being told. And for me, this is the biggest boon of the new technology. Although I resisted video for a long time, I really finally embraced it recently. But it allows people to tell their stories without a producer hanging over their back to make sure that the film will make the super profit. This is also why we need stories from about our local heroes. We just had a Sariling Bayani contest with the help of the FDCP. And I felt this necessity to encourage this kind of thing because, like it or not, the superheroes that monopolize the screen today. These Marvel heroes, Spider-Man, Captain America, Wonder Woman, have made our kids more aware about these superheroes than to know about our local heroes. I mean, okay, we know a lot about Rizal and maybe Bonifacio, but there are still so many local heroes that deserve to be heard. And okay, maybe we can't eliminate the Spider-Man gang from the screens, but let's at least get some of our local heroes to be experienced by our high school and even elementary kids, and break that monopoly. Maybe we can't get the same box office that they do, but at least have the alternative storylines about our heroes. This is the challenge that we have. So the question about issues that are still burning to motivate us should be issues related to our own cultural survival. No? We don't have to stay in that prison of the 400 years in a convent and 550 years in Hollywood. If we know, hey, ang galing natin yung mga kwento, ang galing natin yung mga talents dito, we can do as good storylines. It doesn't have to be in that spectacular way with explosions and crashing cars and bang, 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 and all those formulas. But these are stories that, if we change the taste, I mean, I call them McDo films, I mean, the burger films. We can do our own lying films, our own tinapa films that I think will appeal also to our local audiences. And by being local, we can become global.
Well said. Well said. We have another question here, and I will read it verbatim because that's how I say it anyway. I know maybe this question has been asked so many times, but I miss it. Why and how did you get your name Kidlat Tahimik?
Okay, when I started my first film, somehow pumasok sa ulo ko, it came into my head that what am I going to name this jeepney driver who dreams of going to America to become the first Filipino astronaut? And I kept thinking, and somehow, it was maybe a whim, but I gave the name Kidlat, and then maybe Tahimik creates a first impression, may contradiction, but actually, alam niyo, Kidlat is really just the flash, hindi ba? Yun yung ulo. They're two separate things. But maybe it's also become a spiritual goal for me to just become pure energy. Maybe I don't have to make so much noise to assert myself. But so Kidlat Tahimik was the main character of Mababangong Bangungot. And because of that, when I finished the film, and the Berlin Film Festival asked me, aren't you going to put credits at the end of your film? Meron pang ganun, credits. So I started typing little postcards. And then I came to directed by, wow, okay, directed by Kidlat Tahimik. So I became Kidlat Tahimik at that moment. And I think it's, just yesterday, a funny story. I arrived at the airport. I just came from Madrid. And one of the DOT guys who were processing our papers came to me and said, "Sir, Kuya, can we have a picture? My new nephew was named Kidlat Tahimik after you." And he showed me a picture of a baby about 2 months old. Wow. I would like to meet that baby one day. If the parents are audacious enough to call him Kidlat Tahimik. But it's, I think, it's also part of my anti-colonial struggle. I mean, why have we forgotten to give names to our children that are still connected with our people. Like sa Ifugao, I happen to be an adopted son of Apaw in Ifugao, and a lot of the young couples now they give their children names, and it used to be a custom that you name your child after the grandfather or grandmother. Yeah, kasi it's besides honoring them, sometimes there are certain mythologies also attached to those names, like Binwag or Wagan and Bogan. So I said, anyway, this time we have a choice of three names. Almost everybody has three names. Why not give one to your indigenous forebears? And the child has a choice. Paglaki niya, kung gusto niya George, ang pangalan ko, or Roberto, it's okay. Pero if suddenly says, oh, ang dami ng Roberto, baka pwede ako magbinwag. Di ba? It's a nice way to assert our own rich past and have a separate identity. But that's my issue. That's not. It was a suggestion to them. Let use a local name. You can match. Anyway, we are also a mixture. Di ba? Our culture is a mishmash of all these colonial and local cultures. So why not put our foot forward also with our local names? So, Kidlat, ngayon.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, we have another question here. This one from Deputy Assistant Secretary Lemke. He's asking, how would you compare the challenges faced by indie filmmakers now compared to when you were just starting? And also
I think the
include
challenges
audience market.
Yeah. Well, on all levels, there's still the challenges because people are used to branding. People are used to certain styles that make them feel they get the money back. Yung patok sa takilya. There are certain looks that the hero has to have or the heroine has to have. So all these formula, they become formulas. And if you yourself, it's easy to follow those formulas and you'll be hired by all the producers and you'll make patok sa takilya films and buy your Mercedes-Benz after your first film. But there is something missing in your own creativity. And I think this is where if we believe that our people, mga Pinoy, we are such a creative culture. We are full of duendes who can tell stories. That's what I call the sariling duende. We have a sariling duende who sees the world with special lenses, very different from anybody else who grew up in Hollywood, Japan, or where, and share those stories. It just has to be. We just have to overcome that belief na our stories are inferior, walang kwenta, or hindi pa patok sa takilya. If we overcome those and say, I want to tell my story, or we Pinoys have to tell our story, then I'm sure the world will also accept a lot of stories that we have to tell. They may not immediately generate the super box office of a superhero film, no? But never mind. At least your story gets to the people who are looking for that kind of story. And maybe as a filmmaker, you touch the lives of some people who need that story. So let's get away from that patok sa takilya main energizer and say, my own duende has its own reasons why my film should be shown. And I think this is why Cinemalaya and several other movements have at least paved the way that our stories can at least get reasonable audiences and not they have just rely on the monopoly that the Hollywood films have. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, and in fact, you ended up answering a few of the other questions that I was going to ask. But I'm gonna because I've heard you have talked on number of occasions. You mentioned multiple occasions in the past the inner duende. Um, why duende? What? Because I know you I know that you didn't just choose a mythical creature out of nowhere, you know, and this is for more for our audiences. What is our inner duende, and why is it a duende? Why is it, you know,
Okay.
why that, and why do we have to find it?
Okay, maybe well, duende is a word that's already Filipinized. I didn't know that, I didn't realize that duende is a Spanish word. Pero yung duende is, for me, is like an inner spirit, an inner energy that wants to assert itself. No? Lahat tayo, sometimes we want to tell a story, or sometimes gusto natin magpasikat sa isang babae, or we want to show what something that's unique with us. And the lack of a better word, but I thought it was also a Pinoy word. Anyway, that duende is an inner esprit, no? Sa kalooban natin, which embodies what our lolos and our lolas saw as qualities for growing up. Qualities that may be universal to other countries, but maybe also unique to our own culture. And as long as we ignore those, and I think this is what 400 years of colonization has done to us. We have actually ignored or even shied away from those strengths that we have. So, like, if I talk about the duende, it's that inner spirit that says, may kwento ako. And I don't have to spice it up with formulas because it has to make money, like like the Hollywood formulas. Yung kwento is something that comes from my indigenous roots, maybe, or from my lolo, but it has a value to be shared, which maybe the young people might enjoy or even look up to. So I let my duende tell my story, and I think this is a something that we forgot because of colonization. We have been colonized so long that we want to copycat the latest formulas of storytelling, whether it's in Hollywood or elsewhere, and we ignore our own beautiful stories. And I think that's just basically what I've been advocating over the last years. The Hollywood formulas are very profitable. We can make as many, if not better, sex films and violent films as they do. But what about our old stories that our lolos and lolas wanted to share with the rest of the world? Let's bring them out because I think the world also needs them. The world is also, I think today, itong nangyayari sa mundo na we're overexploiting the planet, there's pollution, there's danger of nuclear wars and everything. It's just because we've lost connection with those human stories that our lolos and lolas used to tell. Eh, pwede natin balikan sila or make our own stories, but big formulas that just want to make money, spectacular films that, I mean, there is a use also for some of these films to distract us, pero there are also so many soul stories na hinihintay ng ating kabataan, na hinihintay ng ating mga kababayan. But the infrastructures don't allow that. But I think some policy from the government, and I think FDCP is one of those forces that can help us allow new energies, new stories, mga bagong paniwala, mga bagong paningin. Lumabas ito sa mga kwento natin sa screen, no? And it's just, I think that's why I've survived all these years, just staying outside of the industry. I mean, there are good films from the industry. I'm not totally, but I'm saying, if I am stubborn in my non-films, patok sa takila, PST, if I'm staying out of there, it's not because I don't need the resources to tell my story, but it's just that the films also have a formula where we ignore those great tales from our forefathers, from our indigenous brothers and sisters, from our ancestors, na dapat i-share natin sa mundo. No? I have here, let me show you something that I have since okay, this is Inabian. She's the goddess, the goddess of typhoons in Ifugao. Now I pitted her as the goddess of the winds from Ifugao with the goddess of the winds from, guess where? From Hollywood.
From Hollywood, yes.
It's a struggle between these two goddesses of the wind for our indigenous filmmaker with his movie camera, his bamboo camera. And although the formulas invite him always to tell the stories, which will patok sa takilya, which I call films, patok sa takilya, he's the challenge. Shall I tell the story that will just make the cash register ring? Wait, up there. Or, in other words, will I also and just have Marilyn Monroe? Or shall I just bring in Inabian, the goddess of the winds? Nasa left to right ako. Ayun. Let the goddess of the wind of our local culture tell the story, and not the wind-blown thing of Marilyn Monroe. This has been my icons for the kind of storytelling that I've been advocating all these years. I know sex and violence is part of life, and I'm not the purist who says there should be none. I hope that the films that were shown in this festival can show that we can relate to non-formula films. Yung mga films na hindi natin kinokopya yung spectacular shots ng Hollywood, which are meant to just distract and to make people go on with life, high industrial societies, and not reflect anymore. let's let some of our local stories keep us on the ground. And so if Inabian, the goddess of the wind, is an Ifugao tale, no? And she was blowing and blowing and blowing, and then, she encountered Marilyn Monroe. Kaya lumilipad yung skirt ni Marilyn. Yeah. It's just a metaphor for me. Let's tell our local stories. We don't have to boycott completely those foreign films, but let's keep supporting our local films. We hope that we have such a bunch of talents now, all these independents blooming out in the Philippines, and they're becoming the main storytellers today. Then I think we will be and I think we are at the moment. We are recognized as a film country with our young indies.
Yeah.
So I just happened to start how many years ago? About 40 years ago. Gurang na ako, pero I'm happy that there are a lot of independent spirits continue to tell their stories. And I hope that this festival that the Department of Foreign Affairs has taken the guts to open this indie festival, I hope that they will not regret it. I think that there are enough people who will at least say, oh, I'm tired of eating the fast food films. Maybe I will have to chew and think a little bit more when I see a Kidlat Tahimik film or a Raymond Red film or Ishmael Bernal film. But let's give it a chance.
Yeah, that's really what we're hoping for, and you are right, the courage of the Department of Foreign Affairs. So many other safer films, as you say, films patok sa takilya, but these are stories that need to be told and stories that should be told. These are our stories and our the stories of the inner duende, and that has to get out.
And in our own pace and in our own style. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, because you kept on saying, it's so easy to fall back on the formula and to be influenced by how we were raised. And we were raised with Hollywood films. In fact, we don't know French films. We don't know Czech
African
cinema
films.
because African films. So this is the break that we need. This is the chance that we need when technology is cheap and platforms are plentiful. So let's see. We got another question here. This one is from director Christina Popov of the DFA, and she's asking, your Balikbayan #1 film, which is a story about colonization, how do you envision the story to end? Because you said that you now have kind of found the impetus to wrap it up, to finish it. How do you see it ending? Spoiler alert.
I think, it's a lifetime project. I'm hoping anyway, I've been on it for about 45 years. And siguro, this year I decided I want to finish the film this year. I'm not changing very much in the overall structure. I'm just adding a few sequences to bring it to the present. So, I would not advocate for anybody to take 45 years to finish a film. You see, I'm all white-haired now. And I think earlier, if you saw that shot where the slave of Magellan is in the arms of Magellan, that I have become I'm very different from when I made my first film, Mabong. But because I wanted to remain independent, I usually act in my own films. Not that I'm Oscar quality or that I'm just, I know I can at least play what I envision and hopefully some people to think about these issues, even if I don't make patok sa takilya. So this kind of, I don't think it is a heroic achievement. Was maybe stubborn, patigas ang ulo ko, hindi ako pumasok sa patok sa takilya industry. And if I got the National Artist Award a couple of years ago, I'm thankful that there's a recognition that these efforts have not been in vain. And if I can continue to tell a local story, and sometimes very personal, my local story is often me and my family, but I think it resonates with an audience that says, oh nga, nakakapagod na yung mga formulas. And why don't we have something na pwede nating nguyain, pwede nating lasahin, pwede nating i-digest, and then come out reflecting on ourselves, on our culture, on our country's development. I think these are the kind of things that I'm happy may buong tribo ngayon ng mga indie filmmakers who are doing what they're doing in spite of the demands of a film industry, in spite of their difficulties to raise funding because the film industry only chooses those S plus V equals P films. S plus V, you know the formula? S plus V equals P. Sex violence equals patok sa takilya. If they have been able to avoid it, and of course, the new technologies, kayang-kaya na ngayon gumawa ng low-budget film. I'm not saying it's easy to make a good film, but it's not. It's easier to reach the finish line and tell your story. So I think these are good developments, and there's a great breed of guys and girls out there who are really telling the story from their local duende point of view with their bamboo cameras. Oh, where am I? With their bamboo cameras. Namamali ako dito sa left to right.
That's fine. Okay, so yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I guess we're gonna have to wrap this up right now. Thanks so much, Tate Kidlat. We're ending on an amazing note. You know, that message of finding our inner duende. You know, finding the engine to tell our story, and you know what the story is about. That there are stories to tell that do not have to conform into the manner in which we were told we have to tell our stories. I think those are the key messages that we need to get out there. That every Filipino has their inner Kidlat Tahimik that they have to let out. And it's a matter of just being brave and getting your story out there, because there will be an audience, right? I mean, there will that will see and listen and hear your story. Okay. As we close, Tatay Kid, you wanna throw in anything else before we bring this really awesome discussion to a close?
Well, of course, I'm quite happy that the DFA and the FDCP had joined hands to share my difficult to access work, both access physically and project, and maybe sometimes for some people who are used to the Hollywood formula, difficult to access in their meanings. Pero it just shows that because we just have to break a few habits. We don't have to give up completely the Hollywood film. But if we break a few habits and say, let me try, I'm tired of these burgers, these super burgers, let me try something like laing, taste it. It's different. or maybe a Cordillera dish with dog meat. Sorry for dog lovers. Pero just this kind of adventurousness to try new works, because I think it will enrich our country, not in terms of patok sa takilya revenues, but it will enrich our people because you get to know other subcultures, people from Visayas and their films, Mindanao, Kalinga, or Ifugao, and not just copying the stock types of the Hollywood bad guy and the Hollywood good guy, and we know in the end they will fall into bed, and then in the end they will go into the sunset. Yeah, sometimes we need those kinds of films just to distract us. But let's try a few dishes, di ba? Try a little bit of these other kinds of films. And so I'm glad that if the DFA has taken the guts to share my films together with FDCP, I don't expect patok sa takilya numbers to come in, but at least if a few people say, oh nga, no, there are other kinds of tasting food types that I want to try in my menu. Yeah, I think that will be it will enrich the audiences as well. I don't think it'll enrich us independent filmmakers, pero we will enrich in the soul na, wow, at least marami na rin umunguya ng aming mga tema, more people tasting and digesting our themes. And I think with that, the struggle for an independent cinema, independent of the dictates of money, then I think we'll all be richer for that. Let me, in closing, shoot all of you here with my bamboo camera. Ito pong bamboo camera, ito yung aking symbol of telling the local story. Story that is relevant to our own Filipino realities. This is not to say that we are a mixture, we are a halo-halo culture, no? And that, yeah, our output as storytellers should also include our local stories. So this is one move against the monopoly of the giant cameras of Hollywood. And you don't even have to be anti-Hollywood, just saying, hey, let's assert ourselves. Let's shoot our own films that tell our own stories. Mabuhay ang pelikulang Pilipino. Yung talagang Pilipino. Smile, you're in bamboo camera. Cut.
Thanks so much. Ladies and gentlemen, national artist for cinema and television, Kidlat Tahimik. Thanks so much, Tatay Kid, for that one. I'll just beg for a couple of more minutes of your time when we have this certificate of appreciation for you that right now we'll award virtually, but it is on its way to you. And the citation says this certificate of appreciation is given to Kidlat Tahimik, the national artist for film, for sharing his film's invaluable insights and vision for the success of tribute to Kidlat Tahimik, Lolo of Filipino, in the cinema, given this 30th of November 2021 at the Department of Foreign Affairs, Rojas Boulevard, Pasay City, Philippines, and it is signed by Secretary of the DFA, Teodoro Locsi Jr., and the Chairperson and CEO of the FDCP, Mary Lisa Dino. So, thank you so much.
Alam nyo, the last time, oh yeah, I accept this very nice certificate. No, I just remember that the last time I was together with Secretary Locsin was probably in the early 2000s. We were in a fashion show. Secretary Locsin and a few other artists, including Satur Ampo. This was a show organized by Hilda Cordero. And of course, I came in my bahag. But it was a fashion show that was tried to be our own sariling duende in our own fashions. Anyway, I send my greetings to the secretary and thank you for letting my film reach out to other audiences.
Okay. So once again, thank you so much.
Sige, Jack. Makita ulit tayo.
Yes. I'd love to meet up again. Marami pa tayong pag-usapan. And so, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Ladies and this talkback is brought to you, of course, by the Department of Foreign Affairs and the Film Development Council of the Philippines. You can watch Tatay Kid's films on Vimeo from December 1 to December 8. Okay, so that's happening tomorrow up to December 8. And do catch them, do watch them, and do understand what it means to tell the story of your inner duende and to chew on something different, to taste differently flavored Filipino food. So with that, this is Jack Garcia. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And again, thanks so much, Tatay Kid, for coming in today. And how much longer are you staying in quarantine?
Another 2 days and then back to Baguio.
Today. Excellent. So, here's to a safe and healthy quarantine period and then return to your family.
If any of you are in Spain in the next days until March, you can go to my big installation, Tres Guerras Culturales. You will see a giant galleon mounted in this Palacio Cristal, which is in the center of Retiro Park. And it's just partly that whole thing that we have to let our heroes come to the forefront and not block them out because the formulas that we have learned from outside are dominating our film industry. So good mga kapatid para sa pelikulang Pilipino.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great day.
This talkback session is brought to you by the Department of Foreign Affairs and the Film Development Council of the Philippines. You can still catch 5 of Tatay Kidlat's films on Vimeo from December 1 to December 8. Register now.